Okay, welcome to Learning, Teaching, and Technology Part 3. So far in Part 1, we did some pre-writing thinking about what learning and teaching is. We thought about what technology is and how it influences society and learning and teaching. This video, we're going to go more specifically into technology in education and our educational system, including a model called Picrat that helps us think differently about technology, and then start writing about technology for your learning, teaching, and technology statement. All right, so I want to start by, I want you to read this quote and think about what year, when do you think this was written? Okay, here's the rest of the quote. It was actually written in 1933. The invention they were talking about was the talking picture, which may prove to be an event as epochal as the application of the principle of the wheel. Okay, so this educational talking picture was supposed to change everything. Now, I think it did make a significant difference because now students can see things that they were not able to see before. But I'm not sure that it quite had this impact that was expected at the time. So putting that into perspective, if you think in 100 years, what will people think about these technologies? Do you think that they will find that these new technologies here have changed teaching and learning? Or is it just continuing with the same type of patterns we've always done? All right, so we're going to look at some educational technologies across time. Remember, we talked before about the product technology and the idea technology. So the product was like the Ford Model T, and the idea was like the assembly line behind it. So this is called a magic lantern. So the product was a magic lantern. It could project pictures on the wall. But the idea behind it in education was visual inquiry, because now students can see pictures on the wall of a lot of different things. The teacher could actually ask them questions about what they saw. They could tell them about different things. And so there was a new way to think about things called visual inquiry. How about this one? The radio. The radio itself, the product, in education, the idea behind it was to actually broadcast lessons. And this was a pretty big thing. Actually, in Australia, a lot of the students in remote areas did a lot of school over the radio. And so it did allow information to be portrayed to faraway places, right? But it maybe didn't actually change how we learned because we just kept teaching the same things. We just did it over a different medium. This is an interesting one. This is called the teaching machine, and this was by Skinner. And basically, students would respond to something, and it would give them the next question based on how they responded. So the idea behind that is called programmed instruction, and it's actually not that different from technologies we have today where these programs where they ask students questions and the next question they get depends on how they answered the previous one. That's actually a really old idea from 1960 in the teaching machine. So you see in all these cases, I think these technologies impacted education, but they didn't change it. And that's one of the dangers today when we see these new digital technologies into the classroom, and we keep complaining about how our education system is not working, about how students aren't learning enough or in ways that will help them in today's society. If we keep using these products just to perpetuate the same type of teaching and learning we've always done, it's not going to change anything. So there's a model called Picrat, P-I-C-R-A-T, and it helps us think about technologies and how they actually can influence learning. So if you haven't yet, you need to go and watch the video on Picrat to give you a basic background. So I'm going to give you a moment to do so. All right, so we're going to look at some different technologies and primarily idea technologies and talk about where they would fit on the Picrat matrix. So let's start with this. We have a student watching an instructional video. Where do you think it would fit? PR, PA, PT, IT? Which quadrant. It's not a quadrant. Which area do you think it would fit in? So I would put that in the replace and passive. So in this case, the student is just watching something. They're passive. And teachers' use of the tech replaces traditional practice. Traditional practice is a teacher lecturing to students, and that's all the video is doing. Okay? But what if we change? What if we make it an interactive video? Kind of like this Ed puzzle that you're watching right here, where students actually answer questions as they go. Where would you put that on this chart? So I would move interactive video. Of course, we're now going to an interactive where the student's actually acting with the program. And ideally, the program would be telling them if they got it right or wrong. The way I use Ed Puzzle, I don't like multiple choice questions. So I would rather have you write open responses and then I'll respond to them. But it does move it towards a more active role as the learner. Now, you might be able to say that it moves into amplifying instruction or amplifying traditional practice. For example, by having you answer these Ed Puzzle videos, I'm able to see how each of you are thinking in response to each of the questions I ask. And that gives me more power to understand your learning. And so it amplifies what I could traditionally do in a classroom where it's more difficult to find out the individual thoughts of every student. So you could make a case that it amplifies instruction, but it's definitely on that interactive area. Okay, we're still going to use video. How about creating a video to express your own ideas? Where would that fall? So if we're expressing our own ideas, first of all, it goes to creative. We're actually creating something. The trickier one is just what does it do on here? Teachers' use of tech. I think it amplifies traditional practice because it allows the students to express themselves using images and sound, whereas normally we would encourage students to express themselves just in writing or in like a presentation, like with speech. And so it adds another dimension on top of that. You could make a case that it comes into transforming traditional practice. In fact, it kind of depends on what the topic of the video is. So let's look at this next one. Sharing your video with professionals and receiving feedback for improvement. So let's say I actually created a video. I was able to share it on some message board with a professional in a field and actually receive direct feedback from them. Where would that be? So this is what would move it, I think, more over to transforming because you're actually going beyond just having your teacher critique it. You're able to act and interact with experts in the field. So we're still creating something, but we're going beyond what was traditionally available in the classroom. Okay, so we're going to reset the chart and do some more. How about digital flashcards, like in Quizlet? What are those? Where would those be? So I think digital flashcards replaces traditional practice because it's just a memory technique, which is traditionally what teachers do a lot of the time, help students memorize things. But it is interactive. So it does allow the student to interact with something and maybe memorize quicker. And again, there's nothing wrong with all of these uses. It just shows us, the relationship between our technologies and teaching and learning. Okay, how about this one? Students keep a blog about issues in the community. In fact, they may even share it with others in the community. I think this one goes up here. It's creative because they're actually creating a blog and writing about their own ideas. And I think it can go into transformative if they're actually having an impact on the community. I think it's amplifying if they're just writing and just the teacher's reading it, because you think, okay, well, how is that different than just writing an essay? But if it actually becomes something where they're interacting with people outside of the classroom, that's where it really starts transforming learning. They're starting to actually find ways to make a difference in the community. Okay, here's the next one, simulations. So this might include, this is a math program called Desmos This is a bridge where you can build a bridge and then you can test it to see if it would withhold. This says 3 heavy buses or something like that. Okay, I think simulations are under this IT, interactive transforming. So it's interactive because the students are interacting with something. You could argue whether this is amplifies or transforms. I think it's transforms because students are able to manipulate something and see the direct results, which isn't something they could do in the real world. And what that does is it allows them to learn through this trial and error in a very direct way that is different than what traditional practice would be, where they would just be told whether something worked or not. They're actually able to experiment with something. And so I see that as transformative. All right, so these are, the two together, the types of things we've done. Talked about different applications of technologies and where they fall on Picrat. So for our last part of this video series, we're going to return to your statement of learning, teaching, and technology. And this is what I showed you in your first video, where on your own, I want you to consider the questions for about 5 minutes, either writing it or talking it out. And then I'm going to ask you to write a 1 to 2 sentence summary sentence based on your thinking. And then we'll be sharing all this in the discussion forum. So here's some questions to consider. What is technology? How does it impact society? How have technologies changed how we live, work, and learn? How can it support learning? How can it support teaching? Should or can technology change learning? Those are some ideas to think about. Do some writing or talking it out, and then write about a 2-sentence summary here in Edpuzzle. Okay, so what you're going to do now is you're going to take all the statements you wrote and you're going to string them together into a statement that you'll then post in a Moodle forum to get feedback from your peers. So look for that in the Moodle discussion. But before we go with this video, let's just talk about the main takeaways. So I like to have takeaways so we can say these are the main things we need to remember from these videos. And the videos were kind of long this week, so there's a lot there. First is that technology is when we use scientific understandings to do something practical. It's not just computers. It's all the different things we use in society to do things differently. Technology has always changed society, including changing how we teach and learn, such as the blackboard or slates or pencils or smart boards. It's always changing teaching and learning. And then the Picrat model helps us think more about how technology can change teaching and learning. And hopefully that goes into preparing students better for what they need to be successful adults in society. Thanks for watching.